Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses. Dr. Cha, you've spoken extensively about the alignment of some of our core adversaries, and as you just referenced in your opening statement, support from China, Iran, North Korea is absolutely critical to Russia's war effort against Ukraine. But many, I think, are now underestimating what these three countries are getting in return for that partnership. Could you just speak briefly to what North Korea is or could be gaining from their munitions support, their now active troop support, and the negative impacts this might be having in the Indo-Pacific region, and how our allies are viewing it and how they might step up?
Sure, Senator. I mean, your question really points to the fact that what is happening in the war in Ukraine has serious impact on what's happening in Indo-Pacific security as well. Initially, I think when the Biden administration publicized the first arms transfer to the Wagner Group, we became very worried that this was the start of a relationship between these two that would only grow as Russia's need for munitions and troops also grew. Initially, we think that what was being provided was largely a lot of food and fuel and energy, things that were really stocked out in North Korea after a 3.5-year lockdown from COVID. I mean, for North Korea, this opportunity with Russia emerged just as they were coming after a 3.5-year COVID lockdown. So this was like a Christmas present for them. But the concern now is that it has moved beyond food, fuel, and energy and medicines to sort of higher-end military technology. And I think if we track U.S. government statements about this, they have moved from statements about the theoretical or hypothetical to a statement of fact. And we have seen this, I think, also in North Korea's own actions and demonstrations. Successful military satellite launches after successive failures. They became more successful after Kim Jong-un's first visit to Russia.
So it's your view that North Korea is almost certainly receiving sophisticated missile, satellite, military assistance from Russia in exchange for their support?
Yes, and the one I would in particular point to is potential nuclear-propelled submarine technology, because the North Koreans put the leader in front of a new submarine and said, this is a nuclear-powered submarine. So this is the one that I think has gotten the most attention recently. But yes, all those things that you mentioned.
I have limited time. You also spoke about the critical role that Radio Free Asia provides. It's got a $60 million budget, but reaches 60 million people a week. Given upcoming elections in the Philippines, given our concern about soft power and influence in the region, Pacific Island nations, how wise or foolish is it that the administration just canceled Radio Free Asia?
So again, I think our access basing and overflight strategy is directly related to competition in the information space, where China is creating these media partnerships all over the global south and creating a narrative of the United States that is clearly counter to our interests. So we need to be able to push back on that with real, accurate information, and that comes from places like VOA and RFA.
Dr. Mastro, you spoke to the fact that the PRC is taking advantage of our abrupt withdrawal from hundreds of different development partnerships throughout the Indo-Pacific. Just speak, if you would, briefly to what kind of challenge you think it's creating for us and our strategic interests for us to have abruptly canceled and shut down economic development partnerships, public health partnerships, things like providing reliable energy to our new basing opportunities in the Philippines, providing partnerships in terms of intel and communications security in the Philippines. What's the strategic impact to our abrupt withdrawal as partners for dozens and dozens of programs across these key countries?
So, sir, I think the first thing to mention is if we are having a hard time assessing what is impactful for the competition with China or not, it's always useful to look at what the Chinese are spending on and what they're saying. So they spend 8 times more than we do on public diplomacy. And as Dr. Cha already mentioned, with all of their information centers, with Xinhua and others, they're obviously extremely focused in this area. What's important for the Indo-Pacific is that a lot of these countries are not it's very different than NATO allies and partners in that many of these countries have a lot of incentives not to support the United States militarily. And so what we have on offer, if they're not threatened with direct invasion from China, of which even allies like Australia are not, what we have on offer are other things besides just that security cooperation. So when we build infrastructure, for example, in the Philippines, there's this understanding that with that foreign development and assistance, that type of infrastructure can be used by the Philippines when U.S. forces aren't there. And so without those types of commitments, there's a lot of countries that they put themselves at risk, that the threat from China becomes greater the more they cooperate with us. And so the only way to outbalance that is with the economic incentives, offering humanitarian aid, disaster relief, foreign development assistance. And that's why the Chinese are so focused on those tools of power.
Well, thank you. I think we're making an enormous mistake in unilaterally and abruptly shutting down long-standing humanitarian, economic development, infrastructure, and relief programs throughout the Indo-Pacific. Thank you.